Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about some of the worst books of 2022, or just some of my biggest disappointments of 2022 reading wise. So I didn't read too many horrible books. On this list I only have about 8 books on this list, and I did read about 110 books this year, so that's not bad at all. I didn't read too many bad books, but I did read some questionable literature this year. So of course we have the worst books of 2022 video, so the next one will be my favorite books of the year, so watch out for that. But I'm gonna start off with some dishonorable mentions, because I have 2 dishonorable mentions, and these weren't per se bad books, but they did really disappoint me, so they made the list. So obviously also, well, not obviously, but I don't own any of these books, because usually if I dislike a book this much, I usually unhaul it. Some of these books I did get as an ARC, library, and other things, but some of these I did unhaul. So the first dishonorable mention, and it really hurts because I wanted to love this book, is A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. So this book is the 3rd and final book in the Cursebreaker series, and the first book in the series is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and it's pretty much it gave me ACOTAR vibes. It's kind of like a Beauty and the Beast fantasy retelling without the fairies, and I really did love the first and second book, but this finale, I think it was also that I waited so long to read it that I didn't remember much of what happened in the previous couple of books, but it was just, honestly, besides the writing, I feel like nothing really great happened in this book, so it was a really big disappointment for me, unfortunately. The next book that I have, it's a little bit controversial, and it's another dishonorable mention. I will say it's not a terrible book. I had an okay time reading it. I probably gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, but it was just a really big disappointment, and that one is A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw, I believe is the author's name. And it's not a bad book. I know so many people that love this book, but I was pitched this book as kind of like a missing person story, and it was so much more about like a cult, and I was not expecting that, and it was just not what I signed up for, and it was just a really big disappointment. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. I've heard of other people that think the exact same thing as me, so this one was also a really big disappointment, unfortunately. Alrighty, so those were my 2 dishonorable mentions, and then the rest of these are just the worst books of 2022. So to start off, I have an ARC that I received, and I was really excited about this, and that is called How to Survive Your Murder. I was super excited. It was pitched as a Scream meets Happy Death Day. So basically this book follows this young girl whose sister is murdered, and she is the only one that witnesses her murder, so she has to kind of go to trial, and she puts this man in jail who she believes is the person that killed her. And then the next Halloween, she's kind of put like back in time. So on that Halloween, she goes back in time, and she's on the day that her sister's murdered, and she's kind of spending the day with her sister trying to figure out who's going to kill her. And I really enjoyed it, but then there was one point that something is introduced, and there are some plot holes in this, and I just could not overlook it. It was really hard because I wanted to love this. I was really enjoying it, and obviously the concept sounds amazing and something like I would really love, but unfortunately there were some plot holes, and there was this one thing that was introduced that I can't really mention because if you're gonna read it, it's kind of a spoiler, but yeah. Unfortunately, I did not love this book. The next book that I have is Cinder and Glass by Melissa de la Cruz, and I think I got this gifted by Penguin Teen. I even did a reel and everything. I was so excited. I thought it was going to give me all of the Bridgerton vibes, because this is a Cinderella retelling, and it was set in France in like the 1800s, and I was so looking forward to this. And then when I read it, I feel like this book, it's literally Cinderella and they just changed all of the names, and like nothing original happens. It's just like the Cinderella story, like that's it, that's what you're reading, except for the fact that it's set in France and it's the 1800s, and I mean that's it, and nothing happens in this book that is different from the Cinderella story. Next up, I have one that a lot of people agree with me on, and that is Hide by Kirsten White. And this one is a is it a mystery thriller or horror? Let's say horror. And it's pretty much about these people that kind of get chosen to play this game, and it's a high stakes type of game, and they have to play in this like abandoned amusement park, and all of that sounds amazing until you actually read this book and you're like, what the heck am I reading right now? Yeah, this book was not it, unfortunately, because I feel a lot of these books that I've been mentioning on this is like the concept is so amazing but so poorly executed, and it just sucks. It sucks for all of us. The next one that I have is The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. I just read The It Girl by Ruth Ware, and that is her most recent novel, and I know that The Woman in Cabin 10 is an earlier release, so it's one of her first books. And reading Ruth Ware's work, I've noticed like with The It Girl this happens, but it was executed a little better, obviously, because Ruth Ware's writing is a lot better now. Like, you obviously, as you practice more, you get better at your craft. But I noticed that in The It Girl, pretty much like every lead possible is kind of explored in that novel, and in The Woman in Cabin 10 that also happens. And basically The Woman in Cabin 10, sorry, I didn't say what this book's about. It's about this reporter who goes on this cruise, and she's supposed to write about it, and then from what I remember, she sees someone go overboard, and basically the whole cruise doesn't believe her. And the whole novel is just pretty much her thinking it's someone, and then she just focuses completely on that person until she solves that it's not that person, and then she moves on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that kind of happens in The It Girl, but The It Girl was like a friend group, so that kind of makes sense. But in a cruise where there's so many people that you could explore who could have done it, I think it was a bit much. So yeah, unfortunately, The Woman in Cabin 10 is not one of my favorite Ruth Wares. It'll continue to be the Turn of the Key, and then The It Girl. But The Woman in Cabin 10 was not the book for me this year. Alrighty, last two. So the next one that I have a whole reading vlog on it, unfortunately, and that is Breaking Time by Sasha Alsberg. I did not love this book, and this one was a historical fiction, is set in Scotland, and it's pretty much like an Outlander-ish novel. If you know, Sasha Alsberg is another booktuber, one of the OG booktubers. Some booktubers have come out with books I haven't read. I think Breaking Time is the first book by a booktuber that I read, that I can't remember. But yeah, basically this one was like kind of like Outlander. She goes back in time in Scotland, she falls in love with this guy. I just feel like it was a little bit repetitive, and if you know Sasha Alsberg, you know that she loves Outlander and that whole story, so I feel like it was a bit repetitive story. And then also the main character, it just felt very much like her, like the author, and I kind of grew up watching Sasha, so it was just way too similar to her characteristics and who she is as a person, and I just wasn't able to differentiate author and character, you know. So, and it was just a little boring for me. I'm sorry, I feel terrible saying that to someone that I actually really enjoy their content, but yeah. Breaking Time. And then last but not least, I wouldn't say this is like the worst book of the year by any means. I feel like all of these are kind of in the same area. But I have The Troop by Nick Cutter. I did not enjoy this. This is a horror, and it's basically like a Lord of the Flies type of book, and it's with all of these little Boy Scouts, and they're on this little island, and they find this man, and he looks very sick, and they all start getting sick, and it has to do with some body horror, and I don't mind body horror. I have read tamer stuff because I have read some body horror that is young adult, so it is tamer, so I think that's as much as I can handle with body horror. But that one, I just feel like it was mostly just about the body horror, and like nothing else really happens in the novel, And then everyone told me how crazy the ending was, and I feel like it was really overhyped for me, because I don't feel like the ending, everyone talks about the last page and it wasn't that crazy for me, but that could be a personal opinion. But yeah, those were the worst books of 2022. I'm glad that I only had 8 books this year. I hope that each year that goes by there's less and less books and I don't read a single bad book any year. Alrighty, well, I'm currently bulk filming, so I'm about to film my favorite books of the year, so I hope that you are looking forward to that and you watch it and you love it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video even though it was so negative. But yeah, I will see you next time. Bye!